And I asked him, I said, how much money do you want to have? Like, what are you trying to solve for? He was unemployed at the time and she was working for us. And he said, well, I want to have enough, but not too much. And I stopped him. I was like, what do you mean? You don't want too much? How much is too much? And he couldn't define it. He couldn't define how much is enough, and he couldn't define how much is too much. And then I challenged him with the thought, how would you know when you have too much? And so my question for all of them is, how do you know when you have too much? And how do you know when you have enough? So here's the big question. How do everyday people like us who didn't grow up wealthy and were not taught how to be wealthy in school, how are we supposed to learn to think, invest, and grow wealth like the top 1% without compromising our ethics and our values? My name is Jeremy Whaley. That was my big question. This podcast will give you the answers. You're listening to Think Rich Radio. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Think Rich Radio. I'm your host, Jeremy Whaley, with my co-host, Nelson Bran, and we're going to have another conversation today. Thank you to all of you for your great feedback. We've been getting some wonderful feedback, Nelson. I don't know if you've been looking at our comments over on YouTube, but people are saying, who's that really handsome guy? It looks like he's from Texas. Have you seen those comments?
I have. They said, who's that handsome devil with the baseball cap is what I keep hearing,
Yeah, well, we're making our mark, and swimsuit editions to be released very soon.
Get your mankini ready, sir.
Nelson, today you had a topic you wanted to talk about. What happens after you make a bunch of money? Was that how'd you say it? I said, let's just start recording. I wasn't even clear what we were doing.
Yeah, so in this case, what happens when our dreams come true? What happens when our initial plan works? So you and I have been talking about these enormous, wonderful potentials in some of the projects that we're in that happen to be bot related, artificial intelligence related, that give a return of about 0.5% return per day, right? And about 15% return per month. So someone goes ahead and says, I don't believe it. And then it turns into, okay, I'll take a chance. And then it turns into, okay, this is real. I think I'm going to make a more considerable investment into this idea. And then suddenly their magic number is 10,000 or some kind of number, whatever it may be. Once they achieve it, they haven't dreamt beyond that. And so what happens to us is when we don't have a plan that's quarterly and yearly and every 3 years or every 5 years, if we get our dream come true, we don't know what to do after that. And then we tend to lose the money that we've made because we haven't planned for it. We're not ready for it, right? So it's such an important thing to have a short term, a medium term, and a long term, as well as a quarterly, yearly, bi-yearly, 5-year, 10-year. I'm going to add something to that, Jeremy. My dad's 80, he'll be 82 this year. And I remember we got into a conversation I don't know, a couple of years ago, no, maybe more than that. And he asked me what were my plans next year and the next 5 years and the next 10 years. And then he went on to admit his plans with my mom for the next year, 5 years, and 10 years. At the time, he was 78, 79, and he continued to make short-term, medium, and long-term plans. I think it's one of the reasons that my parents to this day thrive. They're not on any kind of medication. They take trips around the world, and they're physical. They still move actively full-time every day. But again, he plans for these things. And so that's in my head. And I think to myself, okay, short-term, medium-term, long-term, because I don't want to be in a situation where I have too much and I don't know what to do with it, right? What are your thoughts, Jeremy?
You dumped a lot there. Having too much and not knowing what to do with it is a real problem. It's actually a real problem. This is why we see the phenomenon of somebody wins the lottery and then within 3 years they've lost it. This is why the statistics show that generational wealth can't be kept past 3 generations typically. It's usually within 1 generation, it's like 75, 80% of the families have lost everything. Within two generations or 3 generations, it's like 95% is gone. Because if you haven't earned it and you don't have a vision for what you're doing with it, then it's going to flee. Money is, we use the word currency, but it's energy. Like there's there's something to it. If you don't have something for that currency to do, you don't have something for that energy to go to, it will flee and it will find another place where it will be deployed. And people don't understand this. They just think, oh, Bill Gates has all this money or Elon Musk has all this money and they're hoarding it. And the reality is, number one, they're not sitting on stockpiles of cash. I mean, they are, but not billions. Their billions of dollars is their net worth that's tied up in investments. And what do you see wealthy individuals doing? You see them contributing to causes that are greater than themselves. Because once you have a certain amount that's taking care of yourself and your family and those around you, the natural thing is to go take care of others. And that's what I would encourage people to do is look beyond yourself. Who can I go help?
I love that. You said several things there, and I'm going to touch on all of them. So, yes, people who win the lottery within a year or two or three, they lose it all again. And it doesn't matter how much they've inherited because there's no financial literacy that comes with that big windfall, right? So, and we need that because discipline and knowing where to put your money, all that matters, right? I think a great example of that same notion is sports athletes. Professional athletes, they make a ton of money while they're playing, and unless they have a strategy on the other side, they're going to get in trouble. So a lot of times they're encouraged to buy big fancy houses, cars, yachts, and so forth, and they'll go through the money spending on liabilities, but not on any assets. You said something else a moment ago, which was it's a bit of a, pardon me if you didn't say it this way, but it's a responsibility to have money. It really is a responsibility to have money. Yeah. And mostly because you and I have talked about this a few times. We know that the inflation rate is so great right now, so high right now, that we don't want to be sitting on too much cash. We don't want to be sitting on too much savings, not in the form of dollar bills. So let's assume someone goes ahead and participates in one of the crypto bot projects that you and I are a part of. And let's assume that everything goes the way they planned. They get everything goes well and they get a windfall of money. What then? Do they go back into cash? Do they go back into the bank? And that's a big question, my friend. A lot of people that I've known in multiple projects, they've won. And what do? They go right back into the bank. They go right back into cash. And I'm like, the whole reason we're doing this is to not have to do that if we can help it. But they'll say, no, I got to get back into safety because the dollar and the bank are still perceived safety, right?
Yeah. Everything is perception. Everything is mental. People can only go as far as your mind can let you go. So if you're looking at your life and your circumstances and you say, why am I getting held back? There's a mindset thing that we have to go to work on. This is one of the things that we've worked on and coached on for years. So I'm going to give you some stories here that really fit with what you just said. I had actually it was a girl who worked for me, and she asked if I would consult with her and her husband. And so I did, naturally. It was a free consultation because she worked for me. And I said, absolutely no problem. Went and sat down and had lunch with him. And I asked him, I said, how much money do you want to have? Like, what are you trying to solve for? He was unemployed at the time and she was working for us. And he said, well, I want to have enough, but not too much. And I stopped him. I was like, what do you mean? You don't want too much? How much is too much? And he couldn't define it. He couldn't define how much is enough, and he couldn't define how much is too much. And then I challenged him with the thought, how would you know when you have too much? And this is a belief that I have dealt with people for literally almost since the beginning. I started doing this stuff back in 2009 when I started teaching people. People come in, they're looking for ways that they can be more comfortable, but there's an unconscious fear that they're going to have too much. And so my question for all of them is, how do you know when you have too much? And how do you know when you have enough? And the thing is that for most people, they assume somebody who has more than them has too much. And somebody who has less than them is struggling. Because we're also, I hate to use the word selfish, but we're also centered around our own universe here. So if a person's making $150,000 a year and they find themselves in a room with somebody making $300,000 a year, they're going to say, man, that guy's making a ton of money. Well, the guy making $300,000 a year finds himself in a room with someone making $1.5 million and says, man, those people are making tons of money. I'm barely getting by. And the truth is, because the way that our powers that be set up the system between taxes and inflation and all the other stuff that they've done, the guy that's making $100,000 a year feels just as impoverished as the guy that's making 50, and the guy that's making 300 feels just as impoverished as the guy making 100, and the guy making $1 million feels just as impoverished as the guy making 300, because our culture, specifically the system, has designed itself in a way that no matter how much money you're making, you feel like you're getting further and further behind. And that is the system, which, coming back to your point, I kind of mixed two ideas there. One, we have to expand our mindset. But two, if you keep solving to come back into the system, you will always be behind. There's never going to be enough. Every time you move the threshold, it's still not enough. You move the threshold again, it's still not enough. You move the threshold again, it's still not enough. So we have to change our mindset first. I said way too much.
But you said good stuff, Jeremy. What you're talking is about relativity. It's relative, right?
Yeah.
Because we continue to move up on this ladder, right? We continue to move on the hierarchy. When we first are young, we think, if I could just make $30,000, I'd be happy. And before you know it, we want to buy a house and we need more money. We have children, we need more money. Then we get to know what taxes and insurance are. We need more money. We get a job. We get a great job. But suddenly the house needs a repair. And suddenly everyone at work has a new car. I suddenly need a new car as well. And so it's relative, but we continue to need more as we move along. The challenge is that we're embedded within our heads and in our hearts that it's altruistic and humbling and holy and godly to just get by, to not have more than what we need. Because if we pursue more than what we need, we're ungodly, we're selfish, we're narcissistic. And remember, after all, money is the root of all evil. So these are the arm wrestling matches that happen within us while we're busy getting more money and making more money. And those conversations within our head leads to missed opportunities that we don't see, sabotages we create in our own lives that keep us shackled to the jobs that we're a part of, right? And we're unable to stretch further than that because, like you said, it starts with our mindset.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And I want to be really clear, because someone who's listening is going to take a statement out of context. Money is not the root of all evil. That is a belief that is perpetuated, and it comes from the Bible in a misquote. The Bible never says the money is the root of all evil. It says the money can be the root of all kinds of evil, but it never says that money is the root of all evil. In fact, you can track through the Bible. You can track stories of some of the wealthiest people of the day, and they were critical to the work that was happening in the Bible. You look at King David, one of the wealthiest of all time, King Solomon, the wealthiest man to ever live. And then you go into the New Testament and you look at Nicodemus and some of the guys that were extremely wealthy in their time, and they were doing God's work. And the reason I mention that is this right here. Who, if not the people with money, is going to pay to distribute your Bibles? Who is going to pay for your mission trips? Who's going to pay for the freshwater drinking wells in the third world countries that you want to go help? Who's going to pay to do all these things that need to be done in the name of good if it's not the person with money? And the answer is nobody. It's either going to be some sort of a third-party government type of an agency, or it's going to be the uber wealthy. Now, here's the problem. That's where we are today. We have all these foundations that claim they're doing well, to claim they're doing good. I'm 48 years old. They still can't solve world hunger. I'm convinced if I had $1 trillion, I could solve world hunger in less than 5 years. I'm absolutely convinced of that. But they can't do it. Why? Because I don't think they're doing actually truly altruistic stuff, which is why I say something you said just a minute ago. I think everybody has a moral duty. If you grow up in a society like the United States, where we have as much opportunity as anybody could ever want, you have a moral duty to earn as much money as you possibly can so that you can turn around and do as much good as you possibly can. That is my core belief. Whether I have a lot or whether I don't, and I've been on all sides of it, that belief has never changed. And that is a belief that actually drives me. I truly believe that all of us should seek to gain as much financial abundance as possible. Otherwise, we can't do the good that we want to do.
Bravo. Folks, the reason that I'm doing this with Jeremy is because we're under the impression that people need help, that people need answers, that people need information, that people need knowledge. We're doing this to grow a community and to be here to shoulder you as we move along. Jeremy, as you know, I believe that we live in a world of reciprocity, that what you give, you get back. And I'll tell you, in my personal life, only when I give and give and give do I receive. And anyone who I've ever met who never receives and never gets, I'll always ask them. I'm sorry, when they don't receive, I'll always ask them, how's your giving going? How much giving are you doing? Because I'm telling you now, the more we give, the more we get. And I'm proving it every single day in my personal life. And I'm proving it among some of our cohorts, some of our friends, some of our mutual colleagues. They're doing the same thing. The more we give, the more we get. So I think if we focus on how much we can give, the inevitability is that we tend to get. Insofar as the statement that money is the root of all evil, I think that through the media and just through marketing, we've all been convinced that the wealthy are necessarily evil people. And I think it keeps us safe. I think it's easier for us to say, you know what, so-and-so is astronomically wealthy, but you know what, he's a narcissist, or he's selfish, he's an egotist. You know, if I were there, I would give away all my money to help people. Well, then why don't you work to that and then do so, right? Really, that's a simple statement. So it keeps us safe to be able to judge those that are doing things that we refuse to do ourselves, right? For better or worse.
The reason is because on an unconscious level, we have a desire to stay consistent with how we see ourselves. And if we have associated ourselves as being humble, if we've associated ourselves as being down to earth and authentic and genuine, and we associate that wealth or rich people do not carry those characteristics, then we will self-sabotage so we stay poor. But I'm sure you've experienced this too. I mean, some of the nicest, most generous people that I have ever met are also some of the wealthiest people I have ever met. I have had the opportunity of sitting in the presence of 3 billionaires on 3 different occasions and not knowing that they were billionaires. One of them was so humble in his appearance, I actually thought he was homeless. And it turned out that this guy was worth multiple billions of dollars. I talked to him. I met him on the side of the street in Los Angeles. My friend and I were sitting at a restaurant having lunch out on like a little, is it outdoor seating? And there was a car chase with a real helicopter, like the old California car chase thing, came right down the street. And this guy shows up and he's watching it with us. And we start talking. And I swear the guy was homeless. I mean, he looked as every day. And we were there for an event, and later we talked for probably 20 minutes. Nicest guy in the world. And later that night, we go back to the event. He's the keynote speaker. This guy was worth about $3 billion. I had no idea. And I've had multiple of those situations in my life. And what I always tell people is, you know, you can't judge rich people because you think they're greedy. I know there's a few of them out there. I just haven't actually met them. I know they're out there. I know there's really genuinely greedy individuals who are out there who are all they care about is themselves and all they care about is money. But in my experience, the nicest, most benevolent people that I have met are the wealthiest. But I tell you who's always fighting to get whatever they can get and hoarding, and it's going to sound terrible, it's actually the homeless people. The people that are on the side of the street that are trying to say, give me, give me, give me, give me, give me, and they're not reciprocating. They're not contributing to society at a high level. I'm not being judgmental of someone's hardships. I'm just saying that if you really observe behavior, the most generous happen to be the most wealthy, and those who seem to hoard happen to be the ones who have the least.
And yet we are trained, hypnotized, and conditioned to believe the opposite. Now, I'll admit, Jeremy, selfishness comes in all colors and all sizes. A person can be poor and be selfish. A person can be rich and be selfish. Straight, gay, black, white, cop, robber, selfishness doesn't regard. It doesn't hold a bias. However, as far as a poverty mindset, and this is something you and I have talked about, Our goal is to bring people from that desperation feeling of not having enough and solving for, I have to work, put in the hours to pay my bills, to giving them some level of liberty, some level of passive income, so that we can make a plan with them and help guide them to that level where they'll no longer be desperate. Because you're right, the working class and even the middle class is encouraged to buy a lot of materials, things. So our middle class, unfortunately, lives check to check and has credit cards that are maxed out. That's the truth of our current society. How do we take those folks from that feeling of desperation to a level of comfort, right? So speaking of comfort, and you said it before, that notion that the rich are necessarily evil and selfish and narcissistic, to say that, it's like a warm blanket that we put over ourselves to make ourselves feel good about ourselves. But it's just something that's been repeated into our head for so long. It just isn't true. And regarding the wealthy, so in order for someone to create wealth, they have to have a business, they have to hire employees, they have to take a chance, they have to get a loan, they have to have insurance, they have to really take some massive risks. So anyone who decides to have a company and they create some wealth out of it, that's a lot of responsibility on your back. Now, it's one thing to make the money, but Jeremy, to keep money is even harder. It's a lot harder. And going back to the wealthiest people that you and I have met. So I've met people that are so wealthy and they wear tennis shoes, they wear khaki colored pants or an old pair of comfortable jeans, but they don't want anyone to know the kind of money they have, not if they have a real amount of wealth. Yeah. There is a rich kind versus a wealthy kind. The rich are the ones who get the flashy car and the flashy clothes and the flashy house, and they want everyone to perceive that they're rich, and they probably are. But the wealthy, they've invested enough where they make money while they're on vacation, while they're asleep, while they're doing whatever they're doing, and they just don't want the world to know about it. They don't need the world to know about it. They've gone past that stage of, I'm here to prove to you who I am. They're beyond that, right? They've become enough. And that type is the one you're describing, where those are the ones that they're altruistic. They have excess money. They'll happily give it away. Plus, it lowers their tax burden, right, by definition. So it's good. Goodness of fit all around. Win, win, win.
Yeah, that's really it. And I think what I would like to challenge our listeners to is you have to expand your mindset. We all have to expand our mindset. But whenever I have worked with people on this particular exercise, I'm going to give some exercises here for people. It's so common if you have a mindset that there's a certain amount of money where you cross the threshold and now you're greedy, so you're not going to cross that threshold. Or you have this perception that I need a little bit more, but not too much. If you have that kind of perception, you're actually never going to get there, because the truth is, the story that you get caught up in is, I'm almost there. And before you know it, 20, 30, 40, 50 years passes, and that's actually become the narrative of your life. And so a really, really healthy exercise is to, look at your current situation, whatever your current situation is. If you're making $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, whatever that current income is, take some time by yourself, quiet area, and put a 10x next to it. So you go from, I'm making $10,000 a month, so I'm making $100,000. And then here's the exercise. What if I'm making $100,000 a month every month? So it's $1.2 million a year. And I have to spend all $100,000 every month. I have to do something with this money. And if I don't, it's going to just disappear. Now, here's the crazy thing. Most people, when you sit down to do it, they can't. They literally can't spend that much money. And that's why they don't have it, because you don't know what you would do with it. Now, I'm not saying you have to go spend it on bubble gum. I'm saying, how are you going to use it? You could say, I'm going to buy gold. If that's your plan, that's your plan. It doesn't really matter. You just have to know what you're going to do with it. Now, somebody might come back and say, well, I really want to help people. Great. How much do you want to help them? I want to help them with 50%. Great. There's $50,000. You're going to go help $50,000 worth a month. You work through every bit of it and say, if I had $100,000 a month, if that was your number, how am I going to use it? And if you don't have the ability to answer that question now, that number will never show up for you. Or if it does show up, it will disappear on its own because money needs to know where it's going.
Bravo. So money can't sit still. It has to move, Jeremy. If we sit on it, we've talked about this numerous times. Through inflation, it dissipates, it disappears, right? And again, money is what you said, currency, which is energy, which is, I call it's a river of water, and we must position ourselves beneath those rivers of water in order to get blessed by those particular opportunities. But if we hold it the same way that standing water rots and standing water evaporates, it gets consumed through inflation, through taxes, through. I can't tell you how many times, Jeremy, I've moved money into my bank account and suddenly it becomes usable money. I have all this money in my head and I go through it. Suddenly a car breaks down, the house needs a repair, somebody needs a loan, there's a medical emergency, who knows? But suddenly it becomes something that we have to use. You said something here, my friend. You said a few things there that it becomes our story. And that's so powerful, Jeremy, because all of us were 18 once, and we were 25 once, and we were 30 once, and we all had dreams and goals and aspirations. But if we haven't been able to create something real within those bunch of years, it's because we are carrying that story along. The same story of either I'm not enough or I shouldn't make more than what I deserve. You know, maybe my cap is 100,000 a year. Whatever it is, we're carrying a false idea in our minds, and it's been guiding us the entire time, whether we admit it or not, right? Yeah. You also said something else, my friend, which was the money portion of it. We're not saying, ladies and gentlemen, that the money is the key to salvation and it'll solve everything and we'll be better for it. In fact, I'm going to add a caveat. Money tends to expose and reveal who we really are. It exposes our heart and our soul. And you and I have been witness to folks who created wealth and they've turned into horrible human beings. Yeah. And then we've also seen the other side, right? Where that can happen as well. So all Jeremy's saying, my friends, is that the money can prompt you to do something useful with it. The money can prompt you to better yourself. And hopefully with the level of freedom that same money can give you, you can build yourself, develop yourself, and become a better person and be a better giver because of it. I'm going to add one last thing to this, Jeremy, because I don't want to speak the whole time, but I just made a very good friendship with someone who's very comfortable financially. And this particular person told me, Nelson, I'm starting a brand new project and it's helping entrepreneurs not lose sight of their wives, their sons, their homes, their health, their body, and other interests that are personal. He said to me, Nelson, I've gone ahead and achieved a financial level that's overtly comfortable, where my family and I traveled and I was stacking dollar bills. And I looked at my wife and said, is this it? Could this be everything? And he said, I've got to start this other project. So he invites entrepreneurs to be with him, and we have a very open, vulnerable dialogue that is way better than a networking program where you just exchange business cards and have a surface conversation of, so what do you do? How's the weather? How's the traffic? No. In this particular case, we went deep in conversation where we talked about our history, our childhood, our parents, where we come from, when they come from, what we've learned from our parents, our struggles, the triumphs, the successes, the failures. And it was fantastic. We brought up spouses and children and what we hope to accomplish, who we hope to be, how we identify ourselves. And so money can help us grow in ways that are incredible, provided it's used in a particular way. And I suggest that you and I are here to do that exactly.
Absolutely. I want to tap into something you said just a moment ago before you shared that great story. You talked about how money makes us more of who we are. You could probably a better way to say that in one word is money is an amplifier. Money is an amplifier. And we've talked a little bit about greed. I've talked to so many people over the years that are afraid they're going to become greedy. And I have to help them understand. So in the world that I've operated in, which is trading, people have this idea that there's two emotions that drive the stock market. It's fear and greed. But that's not true, because fear and greed are not both emotions. And once people can dissociate from that, they realize that, oh, actually, I wasn't driven by greed. But as long as you believe that if you're successful, you're greedy, you're going to self-sabotage, because the truth is, in your spirit, you know you're not a greedy person. So let's reverse engineer it. Instead of saying the market's driven by fear and greed, what's the opposite of greed? Well, it's not fear. The opposite of greed is benevolence. It's generosity. It's giving. Oh, well, what's the opposite of fear? The opposite of fear is courage. It's optimism. It's the idea that something's going to become better. And you realize that fear is an emotion, courage and optimism is an emotion, greed and benevolence is not emotion. Those are a state of the soul. Now, once you recognize that we're not driven by emotions in that way, well, we are driven by emotions, but the greed is not the emotion. People always think, oh, I was being greedy. No, you either are greedy or you're not greedy. And if you're greedy now, you'll be greedy with $100 million. And if you're benevolent now, you'll be benevolent with $100 million. So don't worry that money is going to turn you into something you weren't. It might reveal something you already were. That happened to me with a business partner. Money suddenly showed up and this guy turns into Jekyll and Hyde. Well, it turns out if you went back and you looked at the history, it's like that was actually who he was. I just was too blind to see it. Okay. And that's what I have seen over the years. And now it's been, 20 plus years I've been working in this arena. Money makes you more of who you are. It is an amplifier. And so I want to give people a peace of mind. If you know in your heart, I'm not a greedy person, don't be afraid of having a lot of money, because it will not make you greedy. It will just make you more of who you are. And if you know in your heart, if I have a lot of money, I'll be a greedy person, well, do the soul work now, because it's a state of the soul. And you can never, and you should not have a lot of money if you know that you're not spiritually mature enough to possess it.
Bravo. All that you and I just said on the last video, that we need to have at some point a Zoom where people can come in with questions. I think, my friend, if we're going to prove useful, what you just said needs to be in a form of a questionnaire, a survey of sorts, where we can go ahead and look in the mirror and pencil out what kind of decisions we'd make on a particular circumstance to identify where we're at. So then we can begin to build ourselves as necessary. Because it's one thing for you and I to provide a plan on how to make money. Yeah. And then after that, a plan on what to do once you have the money. But the precursor to all of that, the primer, is who are we in our minds? What stories are we telling ourselves? How do we build ourselves up? And all of us have shortcomings, Jeremy. Every single one of us do. But once we can identify that we have them, guess what? Then we can move more comfortably and make a plan to make money, and ultimately on what to do once we have it. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. And what you just opened the window to is actually my real passion, and that is personal development. Money is just a tool. Trading is a tool. Investing is a tool. At the end of the day, we really have one thing we need to get better at, and that is being who we are. We need to develop who we are in our spirit, in our soul, in our capacity, in our mindset. And if you want to make more money, wake up every day and say, how can I become 1% better today? How can I become 2% better today? And if you do that every day, at the end of a year, you're not 300% better. You are literally an exponent of how much better you are, because every day we fall in love with becoming a better person. If you identify that, you know what, I need to be more generous, I might be feeling a little bit like I'm hoarding everything, that's your exercise for this week. Go out and be generous. Give bigger tips. Tip $100 for an appetizer. Do the things that you wouldn't do, so that you're expanding. Because once you expand and once you realize that, you know what, I can do that and I'm actually okay, suddenly everything starts to rewire. And I think that is probably where we should end this episode. Like, how do we each become better every day? If everybody asks that question, you'll be amazed at how much the money will eventually follow.
Jeremy, I'm going to bother you for a favor, my friend. Is there a way that, because I love the way you put it regarding this survey that we have to take upon ourselves to kind of determine who we are, right? because we need the tool sets and the vocabulary in order to believe in ourselves, to make the money. And then, like I said afterwards, what do we do once we have the money? Is there a chance that you could develop something small and brief that we could then give to Davey and Brandon to put it on the Delta Chain Labs Academy platform that is something that people can go to and listen and learn and really run that self-diagnostics rather than doing it on a piece of paper or a napkin at home? They could do it on the platform. What are your thoughts on that? It'd be useful, I think, and then we can guide them along the path that we need to. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. And I will commit to doing it. I've already got a series that I'm putting together for them that we're going to put up on Delta Chain. And I will add this to my list. And it's going to be ongoing. I think we'll probably end up with quite a bit that we're going to share with people. But absolutely, I think it's a great idea.
I think it's awesome. Folks, we're here to shoulder you, and we're going to create tools and labs and training and coaching, something Jeremy's been doing for a lifetime, something I've been doing for a while. But we're here to help you all. We're here to shoulder you. DeltaChainLabs.com is the website, and Trade Maestro as well with Jeremy. Anything else, my friend?
That's it. Let's leave them with an action step. Number one, do the exercise. If I had 10 times my monthly income right now and I knew it was coming in every month, how would I spend it? Find a way. If you can't expand your mindset to know how you would spend it, you'll never spend it. And the second thing is go be generous this week. Go find somebody and don't just do one thing. Not like, hey, I'm going to go give a homeless person $20. You actually may not be helping them. You may be enabling them. Go do something to help somebody that's struggling that you can just tell from the outside that they're putting a smile on it, and just give something and be generous and start practicing generosity, because the truth is there is a law of reciprocity and it is energetic and it does come back, and that's probably a whole nother episode. But if people did those two things and you just exercise those little mental muscles, man, a month from now, your life is different. It's literally different in a good way.
Outstanding. Folks, what a pleasure. Jeremy, any last words?
That's it, folks. If you haven't liked and subscribed, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll plan to be back tomorrow with another episode. Today was episode number 9. I meant to say that at the beginning. This is number 9 we've done, so tomorrow will be number 10, and we're just going to keep trucking through. And I love having these conversations with you, Nelson. Thanks for being here.
Brother, wait till we get to episode 2056. Watch.
That's a really good one. I can already see it.
Have a great day, folks. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.